a good precedent in the sense that 2 years ago, the World Economic Forum decided they were going to tackle the challenge of what they call the fourth industrial revolution. It's a very popular term at the moment, but it's really involves all the converging technologies which are about to impact on our lives. The founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, has written a book, and he's been quoted many times talking about the future technologies which are going to affect us over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And one of his most apt quotes, as far as we're concerned, is there has never been a time of greater promise or greater peril. Now, I've got some bad news and some good news for you in my talk. The bad news is on that slide. When Klaus Schwab talks about promise, he's talking about the first world. So the first world has got falling birth rates, high levels of maths and science, and Africa has got rising birth rates and low levels of maths and science. So it's easy to see that these new technologies, which are climbing the skills ladder, are going to favor the first world, and they're not going to favor the third world. How are we going to address that? There are two books that I've studied amongst many others. I don't expect any of you to read them, but you'll see all of them on YouTube. So for the modern generation, you can either Google Ray Kurzweil or Yuval Harari. Now, Ray Kurzweil is a serial inventor. He's about 70. He joined Google some time ago to look at voice recognition and interpretation of not just specific questions to Google, but the semantics of how the questions are phrased. He's very positive about the integration of future technology, artificial intelligence, and human beings. Yuval Noah Harari, on the other hand, is a history professor, and he's quite pessimistic about where we're going. He says that there's a distinct possibility that once we're bypassed by computers with greater knowledge and interpretation powers than we have, we will become dispensable. So if you watch Ray Kurzweil, a cup of coffee is in the order of the day. If you watch Yuval Noah Harari, then a bottle of whiskey would be more appropriate. But very good. I think you really, if you want to know what's coming, you need to study those two people amongst others. But they're the primary people to look to. The challenges that lie ahead for South Africa are education, and that's no secret to anybody. I've chosen also to talk about entrepreneurship. Employment is hot on the agenda, and I'm sure it'll feature with our president later this evening. And empowerment, and I'd like to make it clear that empowerment, here I'm talking about personal empowerment. I'm talking about all the young people in the audience and all the young people that you're going to go out and talk to. What are we doing as SAICE to empower those people, to give them confidence in meetings, to enable them to communicate properly, to teach them management skills, and then to take them through all the technical skills that you thought you were taught at university, but you weren't. That I will explore later. Now, the converging technologies which are on the horizon, some of them are in your pocket, but they are going to have an impact over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years. And I believe that the 10-year horizon is the one that we need to worry about. Autonomous electric vehicles is one. 3D printing, I think everybody knows what 3D printing is and can do. Robotics, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology. The last two, probably the least known of those 5 converging technologies. And there are many more. But it's very comforting to think that one day you might have a nurse who doesn't need a coffee break and doesn't go to sleep at night and will bring you whatever you need in hospital. My next car is a Tesla. So I'm looking forward to the day when I have a robot which has got 4 wheels and will drive me anywhere I want to go. But the future of what will change mankind and womankind is the convergence of artificial intelligence and biotechnology. So a little bit about those. Those technologies are really going to transform the systems of production management and governance. So we're going to see governments around the world changing quite dramatically in how they respond to converging technologies. This is a graph plotted by Ray Kurzweil. It's on a logarithmic plot, but you can see he takes it from the early days. Let's not worry about the side here. It's the number of computations you get for $1,000. That's unimportant. But what he has done, he's told us, well, computers have already passed 1 insect brain. I think we'll all be thrilled to hear that. We just about reached 1 mouse brain. And in 1999, he made a series of predictions. I think there were about 180 predictions altogether. 80% of them have come true already. I have to say that's according to Ray Kurzweil. So you take that one with a pinch of salt. But the one that he spoke about last November is when will a computer match a human being? Now, Alan Turing proposed the Turing test, which was based on the fact that you would put a team of experts in one room, and in 2 other rooms you would have a human being and a computer. And when the panel of experts was unable to tell the difference between the human being and the computer in terms of their response to questions and proposals for innovation, then you would have reached a critical point called the Turing test. Now, in 1999, Ray Kurzweil predicted that would happen in 30 years, so that's 2029, and in November last year he said no reason why he should change that at all. He believes in 10 years' time that a computer will equal the reasoning power of a human being, but with vastly more knowledge. Just to put that in a little bit of context as to what has changed, IBM Deep Blue computer, they started writing the program for winning chess, in other words, beating the grandmaster at chess in 1985, and by 1997, Deep Blue beat the reigning world champion Garry Kasparov. Kasparov stormed off the stage. He said the machine had cheated. He went back to the back of the stage and turned the computer off, but in fact it was true. A program written by IBM had beaten the world champion at chess. That was 1987. 2 years ago, 2017, so 20 years later, AlphaZero, the successor to Deep Blue, beat the successor to Deep Blue. It now became the most powerful chess-playing computer in the world. It did it by means of algorithms. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, they fed into it the rules for bridge, for chess, and they said, okay, play against yourself and decide how you're going to play chess. It took it 4 hours, and at 8 o'clock that day, it was able to beat the previous champion and any grandmaster that was willing to put himself up against that computer. Of course, no grandmasters were willing to do that anymore. I think they all saw the writing on the wall. But we've moved now from an era of humans writing software to computers writing software. Artificial intelligence is basically software that writes itself. Where does this put us in the convergence of robotics, artificial intelligence, etc.? I don't think anybody's going to doubt that the factory worker is under threat from factories where robots are making cars, and the number of people required in those factories is dropping. Truck drivers, if an autonomous vehicle is able to drive from here to Johannesburg, who needs the truck driver. But do we think of the radiologist? IBM's computer, Watson, can now read an X-ray in a fraction of a second, many times more accurately than the best radiologist in the world. So radiologists are now looking to their own future to see where they fit in. And that's going to happen to doctors and many other health professionals as well. Stockbrokers have long since given up. They now use computers to do their trading for them. So we're not just talking about low-end jobs, we're talking about high-end jobs. And those are people who are going to have to retrain themselves. If they've got skills already, then they're in a good position to retrain themselves. If they don't have any skills, then they will become a statistic, which is unemployed. However, let's not talk about problems. Let's talk about solutions and see where we can go. If we look at education, in 2010, I was the headmaster, if you like to call it, of a group of schools outside Durban, where my company went in on a Saturday morning. It was called the Saturday Schools Initiative. And we tutored and mentored young people. We ran tutorials for them. We talked to them about their future. We guided them on what courses they should study. And interestingly enough, the Durban branch and several other entities around the country were doing the same thing. There's SAICE and SAICE combining for the Young Einsteins program, where they took grade 11 pupils and did exactly the same thing with them on a Saturday morning. The SSI initiative was for matric students. We were thanked by the Minister of the Department of Basic Education. We had achieved, with those people, an increase in marks of between 20 and 25%. Some of those young people that we took through the Saturday school in those days are now doctors and engineers, and our pride and joy is a young girl who's now doing her PhD in astrophysics at Oxford University. And yet, how many people did we impact? 1,400 learners. It is such a small drop in the ocean that you almost say to yourself, well, what difference did we make? But there were many other people doing the same thing. And I think right throughout South Africa, people with a good heart were saying, we can do this. And then about the same time, I came across online learning. To me, then, that was the way ahead. I put it in front of my colleagues, but I didn't get anywhere because, of course, in those days, nobody had a smartphone. I didn't have a smartphone, and I guess in 2010, not many people here had a smartphone. My first smartphone, I discovered I got in 2012. But nowadays, smartphones are ubiquitous. There will be very few schools where there won't be a scattering of children with smartphones or their parents who have access to smartphones or tablets or laptops or PCs. So now we're moving into an arena where we can tap into what's available in the world market. The one thing that really caught my attention was the Khan Academy, and I'll show you why just now. Could I just ask for a show of hands, who's heard of the Khan Academy? I'm so pleased. That's amazing. I asked the question of the Joint Structural Division last week, not one hand went up. The Khan Academy, for the people who didn't put their hands up, is the premier free online learning program for schools and beyond schools. And it's available on your smartphone. This sounds just like an engineer, but some evenings when I crawl into bed, I'll get my phone out and I'll study a bit of physics. Basically, what the Khan Academy will do is it will say to you that if you weren't able to go to school on a particular day and you missed a concept, you missed a lecture from the teacher, or if the teacher wasn't able to make it to school for whatever reason, you don't have to worry. You can watch that particular lesson, and if you go onto that app, you will find every single aspect of the South African school curriculum from grade 1 to grade 12 is covered in detail. And I went on, and I'm now registered. I've registered the South African Institution of Civil Engineering. with all the courses of maths and science, right through from grade 1 to matric. I'm student number 1. And when I did this, I said, okay, well, look, my maths is not too bad. It hasn't let me down. But I'm not so sure about my physics. So I took Physics 101. And the very first lecture was the difference between displacement and distance. I watched the video, I sat the test, and I got 9 out of 10. And it said to me, sorry, you have failed the test. Please go back, watch the video, and try the test again. I was shocked. Not only at the fact that I obviously got the concept wrong. I mean, distance is a meter, and displacement is a meter either north, south, east, or west. I'm sure all of you know that, so I don't have to tell you that. But the fact that the system doesn't talk about 40% or 50% to allow you to pass an exam, it talks about mastery. So when you finish school and you go to university or Technikon, you do not have any gaps in your knowledge. If you do have a gap and you discover, as I did, I was ill for 2 weeks, I didn't go to school, and I missed the whole session where the teacher was talking about the binomial theorem. And for the rest of my career, it's been a void that I don't understand. So when I was solving quadratic equations, it was a tool that was not available to me. But through Khan Academy, I can go back now, so many years later, and I can watch that video, and I can catch up. And of course, that kid in Calcutta that Salman Khan talked about is, in fact, a child who cannot go to school because he's expected to work in his parents' shop. And so at night, he studies. And he's got his matric, and he's now at university. 2 weeks ago, I went to the Department of Basic Education. Henry Kavuma drives their curriculum on innovation and e-learning. I've been communicating with him since last November, so this wasn't something that just popped out of the woodwork. The Department of Basic Education is fully behind the Khan Academy. They've chosen the Khan Academy as their medium for supplementary training and tutorials in all aspects of the South African school curriculum. They have downloaded 950 videos which are available to be put into a school where the learners can access them directly. They've translated them into Zulu and Xhosa, and I presume that they'll be translating them into the other languages in due course. Henry said, put a proposal to us, because my proposal is that you've got limited resources. How are you going to get this out to every school in South Africa? 20,000 schools. And he said, there's absolutely no way they can do that. Tell us how you can help. And he gave me a bit of good news, because this was one issue that I was struggling with. How does a youngster whose father has got a smartphone, but who doesn't have the money to spend on data? Well, BCX, Telkom, is 0 rating access to the Khan Academy. So if you go onto the Khan Academy, no cost. Most of the equipment that's put into schools, which will allow you to access those videos, of course, just comes through your local area network. But the teachers, if they're sitting remotely, and I'm thinking now in terms of members of SAICE who sit remotely, they can monitor those learners at the school, and they can see, oh, everybody's doing fine, except we've got 2 pupils who are struggling. Send them an email, I see you're struggling, can I help? Because you're able to watch their progress online. So the difference between having wireless access and having a local area network is very significant. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel, we just want to engage with the Khan Academy. We've written to the Gates Foundation. We've got a contact there. Neil McLeod's personal friend with Bill Gates, so we've written to him. We thought we might get a check back. That didn't happen, but he's passed us on to their liaison person with the Khan Academy. And the Department of Basic Education said to us, even though we will take some time to approve the method for assistance to the department, please run an awareness program for the Khan Academy so that everybody in South Africa at least understands that this resource is available to them. I wouldn't like to encourage it, but I will tell you that a youngster can study the whole way through to matric without ever once attending school, and he get a distinction at matric level. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. The only difference is, of course, he doesn't benefit then from the social interaction and the cultural skills which go with school learning. So our education initiative is that we're going to approach each branch, ask them to elect a champion, and we're going to seek support from the members of the branch to roll out contact with the schools. In other words, 2 of you would volunteer to go back to maybe your old school. You say, okay, I'll go back to my old school. I'll say to the headmaster, can we come in on a Saturday morning? Can we work with your matric class? Tell them how Khan Academy works. Get them online. Monitor them. You know, at the end of a working day, it takes you 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes to go click, and it will show you how your students are doing. You do that twice a week, and then by Saturday when you're ready to talk to them again, either Skype or by email or by visit, then you know exactly how that class is doing. The ones who are performing and the ones who aren't performing. And we are going to differentiate between the enthusiastic students and the ones who are not enthusiastic. If you're not enthusiastic and you don't want to buy into this program, either the school or the student, then we're not prepared to waste our time helping you. If you want help, we'll help you. Okay. Can I move on then to entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. All my life I've been a woodworker, but in 2014 I had an accident and took one little bit of my finger off, and I decided I didn't need woodworking equipment anymore, so I sold it. And I used the money to buy a 3D printer. It took me a couple of months until I was up to speed with 3D printing. I started off printing toys for my granddaughter, and then little tools and things, and then I got into heads, inside people's heads, and I was enjoying that. And then I started looking around for people of a like mind that I could talk to, and I stumbled across an organization called Makerspace. Oh, and I had a few accidents on the way. Not everything's perfect. At the Makerspace, it's a group of individuals who get together to inspire each other, to learn from each other, to share with other people, and to teach. And when I looked around, I saw exactly that. There was a group of people gathered around, starting to learn how to design whatever it was they were working on in 3D printer, laser cutting, electronics, etc. And the interesting thing in these spaces is that you cannot tell who is the teacher and who's the learner, because the youngest person in the room might be the teacher, and often is, I have to tell you, because the older people might not just be so computer literate. By the way, when I taught myself to use the 3D printer, I used the manual, and I gave my printer to the son of a friend of mine who's mentally challenged, and within 3 days he was up and running where it took me 3 weeks to get to. And I said, well, how did you do that? And he said, well, I just watched YouTube. And I said, duh, why didn't I think of that? Then I started lecturing in 3D printing, and then I was acting as a mentor to people. So Mazwi Ndlovu, he's a graduate of UKZN, and he became an entrepreneur, and he came second in the SA Breweries competition and won a substantial amount of money. And he's off now, probably running his own little enterprise. We haven't engaged with him since, but he has seen the light of day, and I hope that he's going to make a success of his life. About the same time, we had a gentleman come in. He's a retired maths teacher. He lost his hand when he was a youngster, and he had recently fallen, and he'd smashed it. You can see at the end there, he's got a glove on, but the fingers on his prosthesis were smashed. He went back to the people that made his prosthesis, and they wanted 42,000 rand for a new one. He couldn't afford that, he just didn't have the money. So I printed this prototype. I was quite hurt, really, when he tried it, and he said, "I don't like it." I thought, you know, you might not like it, but it works. So are you not prepared to accept it? Anyway, he persuaded me to keep looking, and eventually we came across the Flexi Hand that was designed by a chap called Steve Wood in America. Puts it up on the internet absolutely for free. I wrote and thanked him. I downloaded the file, and I printed it, and that's it now affixed to the sheath, which is the top end of the prosthesis, which was not damaged. 42,000 rand, the cost of that, have a guess, 200 rand. So anytime Patrick falls and breaks his hand again, I can print another one for 200 rand. And then because he wears a glove, we put a glove on it. In November last year, Google came to South Africa and they ran the Impact Challenge. They wanted to acknowledge movers and shakers in South Africa. And on the 28th of November, one day before my inauguration, Makerspace made the grade. They were included in the Google Impact Challenge, one of 12 organizations. And their goal is to take their current 7 locations of 3D printing spaces and to turn it into 200 around the country. You can imagine what 200 will do. It will mean that every city, town, and reasonable sized grouping of people will have a makerspace to go to learn how to use the tools of the 21st century. Now this is a little bit easier for us because we don't have anything to do. The branch will organize liaison with Makerspace, so we expect in 2 meetings' time that when you come to this meeting we will have 3D printers, laser cutters, etc. set up, or we may organize a visit to a Makerspace in Johannesburg. There are 3 or 4 of them. They're all different, they're run by different people with different ambitions, but what we would like to do is to introduce you to the concept of using the tools of the 21st century. It's estimated that 10% of everything that is made in the future will be made by 3D printing. You download a file from the far side of the world, you print it yourself, and I have seen time and time again, I can take something which it costs thousands of rands and I can make it for cents. My GoPro, I lost the lens cover off my GoPro. Cape Union Mark wanted 100 rand for a kit, which of course included lots of other bits and pieces. I printed a new lens cover for 6 cents. I then printed 20 more and gave it to all my friends. Employment. Now, one of the biggest problems that we've got with employment is that people find it incredibly stressful moving into the writing of CV, preparing themselves for an interview, sitting in an interview. So again, we're going to a service provider called Got the Job. This is an online program which we will pay for, and we're prepared to do that on a trial basis, where it does many things. It teaches you effective communication, teaches you how to prepare for the interview, teaches you how to write your CV, and it teaches you, even more important, how to negotiate your salary package. And when Edward explained to me how you do negotiate a salary package, I said to him, well, I wish I'd learned that 40 years ago. I'd have been a lot better off nowadays. So we're going to run that again through the branches. We will run a test program at national office, because what we're trying to do is to take the very poor transition rate from students into members of SAICE, in other words, full fee-paying members of SAICE, which currently runs at about 25%, to up that. So we will pay for people's initiation on the Got the Job program, provided that once they get a job, they sign on and pay their subscriptions as members of SAICE. So we think that even by seeing a modest increase in the number of people taking that option, that SAICE will benefit financially, and of course that will benefit all of us, because the fees that you pay will be supported by the new members entering the profession. And the last one, this is up to you. My proposal is that we create a portal where young members and older members of the profession, let's talk about the young members. Let's talk about somebody who has just started a job. Perhaps he's somewhere where he doesn't have access to a mentor, or perhaps he's nervous of going to his mentor and asking him to teach him something that he should really know already, a little bit like the Khan Academy. He can go online, he can watch a YouTube video, he can listen to a podcast, he can read up on frequently asked questions, or he might even have the services of a real live engineer at the far end of an email who will pick up on his problem and say, okay, I'll help you with that. People who are retired and who would say, yes, I'll give you an hour a week or 2 hours a week. And if they get really enthusiastic, they might even want to do more, because it's of huge value. This is something that I am not prescribing. This is something that you must tell me what you want. You tell me what you want, I'll make sure it happens. I want to ask you all a simple question. I'm prepared to give up a year of my life to make this happen. How many of you are prepared to help me? Put your hands up. How many are not prepared? Put your hands up. Thank you very much. The empowerment initiative will be driven by the divisions. So we will get all the divisions together, and we'll have a central committee which will deal with issues such as communication, management, skills which are not related to technical issues for younger people. And then, of course, moving into issues which the branches or the divisions might be more interested in terms of technical skills. So it'll be driven by the divisions, it'll be driven from national office, but with obviously support coming from people in the regions. And that's how we're going to split the responsibility. 10 vital years. In my opinion, if we haven't got this right in 10 years' time, it will be a very sad day for South Africa. And I do not want to say that we had a chance to embrace the new world and we threw it away. Thank you very much.